am standing next to one of the United States of America's most famous landmarks. Wait, this isn't...
That's not the real.
This isn't the real... What a jip. Now I feel like an idiot. Anyway, I had the opportunity to talk to one of the best youth coaches in the world who has revitalized the Japanese game for both the men and women, and he's American. It's Mr. Tom Byer. Let's see what he had to say. So, Tom, walk me through how you became the first American to play in Asia.
Well, Jim, it's a long story. It's back in the mid to late 1980s, and believe it or not, my college coach, I went to school at Ulster County Community College, upstate New York, and I played for a Hungarian named George Visvari. And he was very good friends with the head coach of the Japan national team at the time, a Dutchman by the name of Hans Oft. And through that connection, I got introduced to Japanese football, soccer. And I went to try out with Hitachi, which is in the J League now, Kashiwa Reysol. And I was fortunate to stick around for about a season. But then I was basically a mediocre player at best. So my professional career wasn't so long.
Okay, so then you retired, I assume. At what point did you think, all right, coaching is what I want to do and Japan is where I want to do it?
Well, I fell in love with Japan like a lot of people do. And, you know, soccer was really just starting to take off in the late 80s, early 90s. And I wanted to figure out some way that I could stay in Japan. I had a couple of good role models when I was a kid. I don't know if you know, but there's a guy by the name of Tommy Mulroy, who used to do soccer clinics all through the U.S., and I grew up kind of under his wing a little bit, and he taught me about doing these clinics for kids. So I just decided to have a go at it, and I knew that Japan needed some instruction at that level. So I just kind of pitched a sponsor, Nestle, and 10 years I was with them, and I traveled around the country doing clinics for kids.
And now you're seeing the fruits of your labor. I think one of the big-time players that people know and love is Shinji Kagawa. How did you find him?
Yeah, he was in one of my many, many thousands of events that I've done. We've figured I've done about, I don't know, 2,000 clinics for about 500,000 children. And he, when he was 10 years old, actually, and I didn't really even know this story until he told me. But I apparently picked him out of hundreds of kids and gave him an award as the best player of the day. And he also grew up watching my TV show and reading the comic book that I appeared in. So that was a nice thing to hear.
Wait, back me up. So you're a cartoon character, you have your own TV show, and you picked Kagawa and didn't even remember who he was? That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty amusing, but that's the way it's. You know, I've been lucky, very fortunate. I had a lot of help, but this is a big joint effort by everybody in Japan.
Now, based on all that success, you're now being courted by the Chinese to help build their grassroots infrastructure. How do the Japanese feel about you helping a rival?
Well, I just actually signed a contract with the CFA August 1st for 3 years, and I just came back from a 15-day tour. The way that I look at it and the way Japanese look at it is the only way to really, and this is my philosophy with players as well, the only way to make the best players better is to make the worst players better, and it's the same thing here in Asia. To have Japan improve and really go to that next level, we need to have a stronger Asia. And China plays a massive part in all of Asian football here. And we've got two former Japan national team head coaches that are both coaching in China as well. So I've got some company.
Interesting. I wonder how that's being received by the people of Japan. Now, how big of a project are the Chinese and their 300 million people under the age of 14?
Yeah, it is. It's massive. A lot of people don't understand, but for many, many years what the problem was is that you've got two ministries. One is education, one is sport. And they've kind of been at loggerheads with each other. Education saying that we mandate sport and back and forth. They only recently started a new association called the Chinese School Football Program, CSF. They started it 3 years ago. It's in 90 cities, 4,000 schools, and about 2 million kids. So it's massive, and I'm sitting at the top of that as the technical advisor. So got a big job ahead of me. I just spent 15 days there, but it's a very great time, interesting time to be involved in Chinese soccer.
Okay, so how long do you think it takes for that to really be seen at the international level? How long will it take for China to be a power?
I think to really be at the level Japan is, it's going to take 15 years, 15, 20 years, to be honest. I mean, the big thing with youth development, people don't realize it's not a faucet that you turn on and off. It's a long-term commitment. it takes years and years, and it takes a massive investment. And without that, I don't care how much money you throw at the top, unless it grows organically from the bottom, it doesn't really do a heck of a lot.
So why can't you come back here to the States, where you're an American, a New Yorker, and help change the infrastructure that's happening here?
Well, I don't know. Maybe after this interview, maybe I'll get some offers.
Now, if you could give one bit of information, let's say in a minute or less, what could you tell our youth coaches to make kids better?
That's an easy one. Less than a minute. 3 seconds. Technique, technique, technique. And that's what it is. Until we start working with younger players at the ages of 5, 6, 7, 8, where skill acquisition is at the best age, it's going to be difficult for the U.S. to really make that paradigm shift. I see the differences. I always say Asian kids, they're not any smarter and they're not any more talented. They practice more than American kids do. And until we have the younger kids immersed in teaching technique and learning the skills, the fundamental skills, it's like the class that they never take. And then they graduate into youth, junior youth, and these different programs, and they're not good enough technically.
Well, couldn't we argue, though, from a coaching perspective, that we have coaches that don't know how to teach proper technique, don't even know how to demonstrate it properly? A lot of these people, especially at the grassroots level, the organic level, which you talked about, is more dads and volunteers.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think the way that we overcame that here in Japan is, especially, people have to realize, you're dealing with children now in the 21st century that you have to understand, how do you communicate with them and their parents? How do they actually process the information? And what we're able to do here is empower kids to be able to practice on their own. And that's why I think my 1-point lesson corner resonated with so many people, and it lasted for 13 years because it was popular. Kids could go out and they could practice on their own. And let's face it, all the great players you see throughout the world, whether it's Messi, Ronaldo, or whoever, they practice many, many hours on their own.
Now, when you see the U.S. national teams perform, both men and women, what do you recognize the most, or maybe their strengths and their biggest weaknesses?
Yeah, well, their strength is obviously that American fighting spirit. They're very athletic, fast, powerful, all of that that's, unique to Americans. What I see, again, not to beat a dead horse, but I just see the technical levels just not good enough. And again, it's a shame because there's so many kids that play in America. We've got millions of kids playing, but they're just not mastering the basics. I mean, it's like reading and writing. If you can't read or write, you can't go into the next grade. Same thing in soccer. If you don't master those techniques and skills, you hit a wall. And I see American soccer as purely a recreational sport more than it is here in Asia. And another thing is, I think that the U.S. has a major approach that is more of a scientific approach to soccer than we do out here in Asia.
What I think is interesting about Japan versus the U.S. is that the U.S. is separated in regions. So if you play on the East Coast, you might have more English influence. You play on the West Coast, you might have more of a Latin influence. I mean, how do you try to get everybody on the same page, or maybe you don't try to do that? Where do you stand on that?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't see that as a big a hurdle. Again, I think if you can get the kids as young as you can. I know, like when I was in California last year. And one of my friends invited me to his little 5 or 6 year old's soccer practice or game. I went. And I just couldn't believe how backwards it was. I just couldn't believe that you've got parents or coaches that are actually standing on the pitch with the kids, like yelling at them, telling them to do things. And I just see that they're so far behind our kids here. And like I said, I've got kids my own age here. I'm of that age, 3, 4, 5. I've got a couple of hundred 4-year-old and 5-year-old kids in my academy that can do things that you cannot imagine. And that's half of it because people, coaches, parents don't believe that you can actually teach things to kids that small and that they can do it.
Well, Tom, this has been a great conversation. Where can people learn more about you and your philosophy?
You can go to my website. It's tomsan.com, and there's some information there.
Awesome. All right, Tom, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you.